Hello folks, and welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today is Saturday, August 24th of 2013. Today I plan to talk about something related to the subject of autism. It is not a topic I have addressed that recently, and my thoughts have somewhat modified. They're always evolving, I suppose, on the subject, and perhaps some people might resonate with how I view the subject. If you've listened to my earlier programs, you know that when I was first diagnosed on the autism spectrum, or I should say rediagnosed on the autism spectrum, back in, I believe it was 1997, I went online and looked up for some autism resources, and the first thing I found were some websites focusing upon the anti-cure movement, and I was somewhat attracted to it. So I went and I read much of the material, and I suppose that I talked myself into being an anti-cure neurodiversity advocate. These days, while I'm still willing to use the word neurodiversity, I use it as a simple description of the fact that just as we are diverse in other ways, physically, spiritually, and so forth, we are also diverse neurologically. Neurodiversity is not a good, and certainly I feel right now, much of what is autism spectrum disorder is not particularly desirable. At least it has not been for me. I have seen how it has impacted me, my inability to relate to others, which is variously called theory of mind, mentalizing, empathy, all very closely related constructs that made me kind of alien in my own world. The title of a very popular autistic message board, Wrong Planet, really described me. I felt for much of my life that I was literally an alien in my own world. So being autistic for me was never pleasant. When I was actually first diagnosed with autism, it wasn't called autism, it was called schizophrenic reaction of childhood. That was later changed to schizophrenia of childhood. Either way, childhood schizophrenia or pediatric schizophrenia was my original diagnosis around 1962, when I was just 6 years old. Part of the description of childhood schizophrenia in the DSM, the original Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, was schizophrenic behavior. Autistic type behavior. So that was in fact the most common category in which autistic people were placed, was under childhood schizophrenia. Those autistics who in addition were non-speaking were also very commonly given the diagnosis of mental retardation, or as it is now generally called, intellectual disabilities. So autistics were really not understood very well as autistics until relatively recent in world history, and still in some countries, such as France, for example, the problems continue where autistics are regarded as literally being psychotic. Fortunately, that is not true in most Western countries. Nevertheless, the treatment of autistics is still not ideal. There is still no perfect treatment for autistics. There are no medications which are specifically designed to treating autism, although some medications can deal with certain of the symptoms that many autistics experience, such as anxiety and lack of focus. So I have been seen as being an autistic since I was a little kid. And when I first looked around and saw all this stuff about neurodiversity and autistics not being cured, I seem to have somehow forgotten my own life history and all the struggles that I went through as a child living as an autistic, the struggles that my father was also diagnosed as an autistic similarly experienced, although he was diagnosed toward the end of his life. And the problems that the two of us had in our family, because autist to autist, we really had a very difficult time living with each other, and together we created a very dysfunctional family, and it very negatively affected the other members of my family, unfortunately, and I am still very, very sad for that, even though I obviously don't blame myself, but nonetheless I recognize the part that I played in making life for other members of my family so difficult, with my constant collapses and breakdowns and inabilities to tolerate various noises and other things which are very common among people on the autism spectrum. I was literally going from meltdown to meltdown throughout my childhood, even though it was not at that time diagnosed or seen as autism. In fact, autism as a specific disorder was not defined as yet. Autism was always recognized by the American Psychiatric Association, which was previously known as the American Medico-Psychological Association, as schizophrenia, and previously as dementia praecox, which was the old name for schizophrenia. All of a sudden, in the course of my meditations, I discovered empathy. For the first time through my life of prayer and meditation, communion with God and devotion, I entered into a relationship, a close communion with God. I discovered my guardian angel, Hadrat Sultan Bahu. Through him I discovered that I had been introduced to all the other members of my spiritual family, whether in this world or some of them now in the world to come. I began to have genuine spiritual connections with souls in the next world, as well as with souls here, and many people immediately noticed that I had literally become a new person. I discovered empathy. I discovered how to mentalize, how to imagine how other people would do certain things. I developed a theory of mind, an ability to put myself in the position of other people. So I rejected the anti-cure model, and I came to define myself not only as an autist, but as an emancipated autist. So with that in mind, here is what I have done in the last few weeks. What used to be called the United Against Neuralitism website is now referred to as the Emancipated Autism Project. The subhead is Fighting Neuralitism Through Unity. Neuralitism is an acronym I coined based upon neurological and elitism. I now see neuralitism as a condition resulting from a lack of unity. And also I think that as various treatments, perhaps even hopefully targeted cures for some of the negative symptoms of autism are developed that will also help to defeat neuroelitism. I will, of course, include a link to this revised website directly below the program. Secondly, my other site, which used to be called Subtext, is now called Dr. Foster's this site used to be called Dr. Foster's Autism Services. It's now called Dr. Foster's Emancipated Autism Services. This is a kind of business that I operate, which is a part of Mark A. Foster Services. However, so far I have not made any money at it, nor do I really think that I particularly want to make money. I am certainly willing to go out and give talks on the subject of autism, and if somebody wanted to pay me, I doubt I would turn them down, but I'm not going out of my way to find clients or organizations to present the information to either. I will again include a link to this website below the program. Finally, a site which used to be called Subtext is now called An Emancipated Autist. This is my personal autistic self-advocacy website, and it is connected with my Emancipated Autism blog. It's the way in which I can express my own personal experience of discovering emancipation from autism. Now, let me explain very briefly what I mean by emancipation. I am using emancipation in a similar way that Roy Bhaskar, the founder of the philosophy of critical realism and its more recent evolution into the philosophy of meta-reality, has used the term. By emancipation, what he means is emerging from a condition of demi-reality or disunity into the cosmic envelope or universal unity, which on an interpersonal level he refers to as co-presence, literally being present with other people. He refers to that as a state of non-duality, similar to the Advaita concept in Hinduism. Advaita is a Sanskrit word which translates as non-duality. On the other hand, he does not reject Dvaita, Dvaita Sanskrit for duality. There certainly is a legitimate realm of duality or diversity. We live most of our lives conscious of diversity or duality. The main thing is that rather than lowering ourselves entirely into this realm of duality, we should try to elevate ourselves into the cosmic envelope or non-duality. If we live constantly in duality, the danger is that we may develop what Bhaskar calls demi-reality. Demi-reality is disunity. It's alienation. It's being cut off or, in effect, disoriented from the world and not being connected or at one in the sense of at one-ment or atonement with others. It is literally experiencing my connection, my connectedness with everyone and everything, all beings and things, and recognizing through this great cosmic envelope that I am connected with God. Separate, yes, but connected through His wonderful prophets. So that is the kind of emancipation I have discovered. Emancipation is something I have realized that most autistics I have met have not experienced. There have been several recent studies, for example, which have found that there is a much higher rate of atheism among autistics than the general population. That is understandable from the perspective of theory of mind or mentalizing or empathy. If a person can not have an easy time with being able to relate interpersonally with other human beings, how is that person going to be able to relate with the divine being? And that is why I think it is so important for autistics, not only autistics, but especially autistics, given the horrendous effects of that disorder on our spiritual lives, to become emancipated from autism spiritually. The medical aspect may follow, or perhaps it may not even be necessary. But at least on a spiritual level, hopefully, we can all learn how to become emancipated, particularly from autism. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.